Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We got a great show for you. First of all, Bob and Joe, we're going to talk about Canadian wrestling stars, dedicated to our good friend, Liam Savage. Then, another friend of Liam's is our special guest, the amazing, wonderful, and oh so funny Anthony Pires. You don't want to miss this one. Grab your pork rinds, grab your cod crispies. Let's get ready for a show. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Oh, I forgot to say, Well, hello, everybody. This is Bob Smith once again. You may remember me from Pro Wrestling Illustrated and a whole bunch of wrestling magazines in the 80s and 90s. This is the Outdated Wrestling Hour, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. And I hope that Joe Puccio enjoys it too. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Bob. And this should be a good one. Canada has a rich history with pro wrestling and, going from as very far back as I can remember, there's always been a good selection of wrestlers from North. And I think it's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.
I think at wrestling's height, the 70s and 80s, in those years, I don't think there was a single major federation didn't have one or two Canadians on the rosters. I mean, they were all over the place, just integrated right into it. And of course, with trainers like Stu Hart and people like that, Canada had a rich history of producing not just wrestlers, but really good wrestlers.
Very true. And I mean, who doesn't love hearing about the stories? You mentioned Stu Hart, the stories about training in the dungeon. And there's just so many great wrestlers that have those great tales of the torture, and hearing the screams and just putting in their work to get to where they were. But Stu will always be one of the most interesting characters, and I never get tired of hearing stories about him and the Hart family in general, but mainly Stu.
Did you imagine stretching somebody, making them scream because you actually liked them? No, seriously.
I can't.
That was a training technique.
I know.
Because Stu knew that if you're going to be a pro wrestler, you're going to feel some pain a lot, and you might as well feel it now. And if you can't take this, maybe you can't take the rest of it. I think that was the psychology behind that. And let's put it this way: he put his own sons through it. That's for sure. All 5 or 6 of them, however many there were, all the other Hart. And I wonder if he trained his daughter, or I wonder if he trained Natalia. Was he alive at that point?
That's a good question. I don't know that she was trained in the dungeon. I'm not sure about that. What about
that's an interesting question?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I guess that's her husband, Tyson Kidd. I don't know if they if they got the dungeon treatment.
But there were people who weren't Harts that got the dungeon treatment too. A lot of them, and that's why I think Stu is held in such a high regard. It's funny. He'll stretch you, but nobody said a bad word about him afterwards. They were all indebted to him.
Right.
Did anybody say anything bad about Stu Hart? I haven't.
No, I can't. And I mean, it's such a different philosophy, right? In how guys were in general terms, how they were trained back then as they sort of were trained in later years, because I guess nowadays that might be considered, abuse, and I know it was border on abuse back then, but I guess it was just it was a different breed of wrestler, that was coming in. Now it's a little different. I don't think
there were plenty of trainers that gave the kids the what for, because sometimes you had some kids who strutted and going, I'm a great athlete. I did this in college. I did this in high school, and I'll do this fake stuff. Oh, it's fake, is it? That's when they got stretched. Right. It's like, don't come in all cocksure, full of yourself, Mr. Young Athlete. This is wrestling. This is a whole different animal. I think they needed to be taught a lesson right the minute they walked in the door, really.
Yeah. And that goes beyond Stu and the stretching. That goes even into like the old territories when you hear all these stories about the promoters and where the talent would be out at a bar after hours, and you get one of those drunk fans going up saying, "Oh, it's fake, and I could beat you, I could take you, and this and that." And the promoters, a lot of the times, would say, you have to protect the business, and you have to teach these fans a lesson, because if you don't, then it's sort of like putting a black eye to the industry. Like we're not really that tough. So it was sort of promoted in a way that they wanted their talent to sort of make an example of these fans. So it's kind of the same concept. Whereas nowadays, obviously, that would be completely a no.
Absolutely. Well, but anyway, let's look back with fondness at many of our favorite Canadian stars. I'm going to start with an unlikely ones to bring up first, but I'm going to bring up Mad Dog and Butcher Vachon. Oddly enough, I was a bigger fan of Butcher Vachon. I loved his corny shtick. He's a big bald guy. He kind of, by the time he hit in the 1980s, he was in the WWF, but he was kind of immobile, but still they pushed him for one title shot and then he went back into the mid card. But he would do this bit where he would do a nice move against the opponent, then clap his hands like that was nothing. Or the
Yeah,
other thing is when he knock his opponent down, he go, "Get up, you coward." He was just so old school. He was so Bluto. He was Bluto. That's who Butcher Vachon was. I loved watching him work. And I know he was immobile. And when he fell, it was a chore by that point. I loved him. I thought he was awesome. I thought he was immensely entertaining. And Mad Dog Vachon was a major star in the AWA for decades. So you got to give the prop. And of course, there's Vivian Vachon, and Luna.
and
You
Luna,
know,
right?
that's the lineage of the Vachons, and great stars, all of them.
They were. Yeah, I was always a big Luna Vachon fan back in the day. I think he was the adoptive father. I've always been a fan of Luna as well. I've always had a liking for her. I'd always thought her gimmick was incredible. I mean, was there anybody who played that completely insane gimmick of the female wrestlers back then better than Luna Vachon? I mean, she seemed like she was legit nuts,
She was,
and she was a good worker too.
yep, she was great in every way. And I'll tell you what, very, very nice person, absolute sweetheart behind the scenes. Everybody loved Luna Vachon. They really did. I was sorry to hear when she died. Way too young. I don't know what to say other than if she's not in the Hall of Fame, she should be.
Yeah.
Seriously now, because she was the prototype of the early psycho lady wrestler. There was
Yep.
nobody else like her at that point. And when she was with Kevin Sullivan and that bunch in Florida, she was even wilder than she was anywhere else. So no, she was really good at what she did.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you there. And what about, speaking of Canadian wrestlers, what about Dino Bravo?
Yep, one of the first ones I wrote down too. Another guy who died too young under mysterious, nefarious circumstances. But
That's right.
in his prime, I prefer to look at him in his brown-haired prime when he was younger. And not only was he a strongman, he could drop kick really high and do athletic stuff as good as anybody else in the ring. It's when he got to the WWE in the 80s where they dyed his hair blonde and he became the world's strongest man out of nowhere. And, he bulked up and it worked to an extent, but he wasn't that over. It
He
didn't
wasn't.
really work that well. Even when he did a bit with Ventura where he was lifting weights. Do you remember that when supposedly set
Absolutely.
a new world's record?
Yeah.
It didn't go over. It just didn't go over. I don't think he had the right personality. If he tried to be mean, but it didn't work all that well. So,
Like,
in any event, I prefer to think of the Dino Bravo that won the WWF Tag Team Champion with Dominic DeNucci, and the even younger one who I saw in the IWA, and even younger one that I saw on Canadian wrestling shows. So, no, Dino Bravo in his prime was as good as anybody out there.
yeah, he was. And you're right. He never, for whatever reason, never really got over, like you said, in the WWF during his second stint, when they dyed his hair. I assume it was really, if you think about it, it was probably more, he didn't have the greatest personality. He wasn't really a great talker, or at least they didn't allow him to be. He didn't really do a lot of promos. And I guess that's why he had the manager with him. I guess he had Johnny Valiant cutting his promos for him when he was doing that. But yeah, never got over to I think what he could have, because he was actually a decent. Yeah, I always thought he was a decent worker and he was entertaining, But I always liked him. Yeah, I did. I did enjoy his work in the
But
WWE.
let us not discount his work to the point where he actually, I think he semi-owned one of the organizations in Canada. He was the biggest star up there.
Yeah,
To a lot of Canadians, Dana Bravo was Canadian wrestling.
yeah.
They had Rick Martel too, another great star. But I think Bravo was even more popular than Rick Martel was there.
Okay,
Somebody can correct me in Canada if I'm wrong about that, but no, Bravo was held in the highest esteem. Just his star never waned up there.
right.
But his problem was when he went to the WWE and folded the promotion that he was in, there was no place for him to go back to. You see what I'm saying? Like when he left the WWE after the blonde-haired muscle guy bit, if he went back there, he's going to work for a small organization and not have the fan base that he used to. So much changed from the time he entered the WWE and the time he left it that his career was over. There was no place left for him to go, and I don't think the NWA had any interest in him for some reason. Isn't that funny? There weren't that many Canadian wrestlers in the NWA.
Hmm. Yeah, that is
Maybe
interesting.
Ron Garvin. I think Ronnie was Canadian, but they weren't. They never played it up.
True.
Martel kind of peaked in there for a few minutes and stuff like that, but maybe it's just logistics. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting thought there. But of course, Pat Patterson,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bret Hart,
Yeah.
right? We talked about him before, but Bret Hart is one of in the top 10 of all time, and you can't deny that much talent. Davey Boy Smith was Canadian, you know. Abbey was Canadian. Abdullah the Butcher,
Right.
the Madman from Sudan, is actually Canadian. Let us not forget that. Roddy Piper, Glasgow, Scotland, by way of Canada,
Right.
right? Did you know Gail Kim was Canadian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is
One of the
true.
greats. One of the
Yeah.
greats.
Did you know John Tolos was Canadian? I totally forgot that. The great 1970s guy who got in a big feud with Blassie and was a great heel. He was Canadian too. So, there's tons and tons of Canadian stars out there we could talk about. Trish Stratus, of course, another great Canadian. Natalia was another great Canadian. I mean, now it's not all that unusual for a lot of great wrestlers to be from Canada because Canada has such a rich history with Calgary and Stampede and that Bravo promotion that Gino Brito was involved in, stuff like that up there. That they did a lot of money up there. They really wrestling was like right after hockey, I think, in terms of I'm serious. It was really popular up there. But times changed, and I think everybody got WWFized. Isn't it amazing how all those wonderful promotions just withered away one by one, replaced by WWF. It's just exactly what happened. There's no other way to put it. They didn't do anything wrong. They just got eaten up by the juggernaut.
That's right. I mean, it was inevitable. At some point, it was inevitable, but it was just they chipped away WWE little by little until there was really pretty much nobody left. I mean, of course, there was still, you still had your NWA and, WCW eventually and places like that. But for the most part, it was pretty much done after a certain point.
And let's not forget the legendary Al Tomko promotion. The dead silence is exactly what that deserves. Yeah, on Grand Prix Wrestling too, and George Cannon's Superstars of Wrestling was another action-packed federation up there. I could go on and on if I really think about it, but we don't have a whole lot of time. But yeah, I just want to pay tribute to all the great Canadian stars. Who's your favorite Canadian star?
Boy, if I had to pick, I mean, I'm trying to think of someone to not give the cliche answer because I think my first instinct is always to say Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
As I would assume a lot of people would say. Other than Bret Hart, I mean, I was always a very big Chris Jericho fan.
But yeah, but you know something? I didn't list him because he was, I think, technically born in Long Island, but grew
Long
up in
Island,
Winnipeg.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how he got the Jericho last name, my friend.
Yep. Yep.
From Jericho. But he did grow up in Winnipeg. So I guess you could say he was Canadian if he changed citizenship. Sure. So I don't know how it worked, but yeah, you could say that. I mean, that's basically true.
And you just mentioned, hockey. Obviously, hockey being so huge in Canada, and obviously Jericho's dad was a hockey star, Ted Irvine, back in the day. But yeah, I've always been a fan. I mean, another guy that, not that he was my favorite, but another guy I'd like to mention is Lance Storm. Always a big fan of his work, and obviously he had the issue of charisma or lack thereof. And that's where that's one of the reasons why he probably didn't succeed or excel as well as he could have. But I don't know. I always got a kick out of him. I thought that dry sort of sense of humor and those dry promos where he was playing into the fact that he didn't have a lot of charisma, where he would say, what was it? If I can be serious for a minute, or I think that was his sort of line that they would go at. But he was a fantastic wrestler, Lance Storm. Excellent.
Yes, he was. He was really great. I think he retired young. Did he get hurt or something?
He might have got hurt. Maybe that's why he retired. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I think he still does some work here and there behind the scenes.
I see his name pop up every now and again, but I'm not, I'm not, being that I'm not as into the new stuff as I am about the old stuff. I kind of see his name come and go on social media and then go away again. And then 3 months will go by, I'll read his name again. So
right.
I know he's up to something. I think he may be in the podcast world or doing something with some kind of social media, perhaps, but I'm not exactly sure. But he was great. All I care about is what's in the ring, and he was great in the ring.
Exactly. And you want to know something? Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Rocky Johnson was born in Canada.
Interesting.
I believe so. I have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that he was born in Canada. I don't know how long he was there, but I believe he's originally from Canada.
So there's a lot of Canadian stars out there that we can all pay tribute to, and we're doing it right now on this episode of the OWH. And speaking of Canada, El Macombo is a club I used to frequent when I went to SUNY Brockport. I would take that. I think I took a bus. That's right. I used to take a bus from Rochester to Toronto. Yes, you can do that. And I would spend 5-6 hours on Yonge Street and go to the El Macombo and have the time of my life watching some grooving R&B musicians play, and then I'd come back and miss class the next day because I was just a wonderful student. But no, I love Canada. I really do. Oh gosh, I spent a lot of nice times up there. I went to the Jazz and Blues Festival that goes on there every year with a bunch of my newspaper cronies, and we had a wonderful time. I look for excuses to go back, but I never do. But I want to go back because I enjoy Canada. So it's a great place.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. How long was that bus ride, more or less?
It was 6 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 hours from Rochester to Toronto. Yeah, but I got up there and I was with somebody who knew what they were doing. That was the beauty part.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to go for the music scene up there. And back then, like I said, that area in mid Toronto was just loaded with some great music clubs and fantastic musicians who you may never have heard of, but the groove was always there. I mean, Toronto's a great music. It still is, from what I understand. And the El Macombo is still there. It's an old place, but it's still rocking and rolling. So even the Stones played the El Macombo.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why they did it, but they played the El Macombo.
Yeah, I would love to. I've never been to Toronto. I would love to go to Toronto one day. A lot of things I want to see there. And I remember back in the day, I really was dying to go to the Sky Dome for that WrestleMania that they did there back in, I guess that was 1990, for Hogan and Warrior. But yeah, it's so many things to do there. Seems like it's a beautiful city.
That Montreal's beautiful too. Memories for me. Anyway, we'll be right back after this super duper important message. Don't go anywhere. Go if you don't want to listen to this 3 minutes of hype, go in and get like a Labatt's or have some back bacon or maybe some of those little red candies from up there. Have some Canadian food. And the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We'll be right back after this message. Well, I reckon it's time to do a little bit of an update for the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Let's see what shows you can enjoy several times every week. They've got a veritable cornucopia of wrestling podcasts, so let's dig into it. Pretty much the flagship of WrestleCopia is the Wrestling Memory Grenade. Join host Ray Russell as he analyzes and discusses years of wrestling history from your favorite promotions. From Hulkamania to Mulkymania, from the Midnight Express to the Lex Express, they've got it all. Tune in and get a big piece of history on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. If you like nostalgia, this one's for you. The Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop. What a legend Bob Roop is, and he welcomes you to the Wrestling Stoop as he shares stories, historical moments, and all kinds of memories from his 20-plus year career as a wrestler and booker. And you know he got wild near the end of his career. Find out all of it on the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop. One of the most unique wrestling podcasts anywhere is DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. Join host Dan as he travels back in time to discuss the history of pro wrestling in Japan. He's spent decades studying the world of Japanese pro wrestling. Now he offers up his historian-level knowledge to you. You'll learn something on every single show, I guarantee it. That's DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. The great Gene Jackson hosts the Retro Wrestling Review. That's RE-View. Brings in a variety of co-hosts and wrestling legends to the program as he goes back in time to watch and review pro wrestling from years ago by. Get the breakdown here at Never Before Heard Stories, and feel free to watch along with them. It's worth it, let me tell you, especially if you're a USWA fan. Enjoy the Retro Wrestling Review. When this show started not all that long ago, it was called Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert. Now it's Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich, two of the great stars from Memphis and beyond. You'll learn all about them, hear great old school stories, stuff you've never heard before, definitely on Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich. One of my personal favorite podcasts out there is Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty, a meat and potatoes name for a anything but a meat and potatoes show. Join him as he reminisces about pro wrestling history with a variety of legendary guests and topics. And what I like about him, he knows everything about Dick the Bruiser, Bruiser Bedlam, and the WWA. But that's only part of what you'll hear on Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. It was the WWF versus WCW, Raw versus Nitro, the Monday Night War, the Ratings War, the NWO, the Attitude Era. Now, there's a podcast all about it. It's called Monday Warfare, Raw versus Nitro. They break it down with episode reviews, you name it. If you want to know all about that classic ratings war, listen to Monday Warfare, Raw versus Nitro. One of the most unique podcasts you'll hear anywhere is the Other Ship podcast. It's a pop culture contest with a pro wrestling lean. Join a rotating group of co-hosts as they talk movies, sports, music, TV, food, and of course, pro wrestling. They take on various topics in roundtable discussions, special guest interviews, and other content concepts. As they say, laugh your ass off on this voyage aboard the Other Ship. New episodes are in the bag for the Captain's Corner pod. Join Captain Nick as he presents the Captain's Corner podcast. It features old school wrestling interviews and discussions, plus all the latest goings on in the world of the Captain's adventures. Nothing else quite like the Captain's Corner pod. Also on the WrestleCopia network, the Glory Days GrappleCon cast. Hosts Barry and Captain Nick present the Glory Days GrappleCon podcast featuring memories and special interviews with wrestling stars of the past and even those of today. There's even more at WrestleCopia, a podcast called TR Shocks the World, the WCNN News, and the Power Hour. It's quite a lineup with more new podcasts joining all the time. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. How do you get involved? It's pretty easy. Go to their constantly updated website, WrestleCopia.com. Click a few buttons and take a voyage into wrestling's past, present, and future. Get it all at WrestleCopia. As I keep repeating myself in saying, but I'm going to continue to say it, I got into the podcast world under my own name to have a good time. I want to show appreciation for the people in wrestling that I admire, and one of them is our guest today. He's made his mark in wrestling media the last decade or so, I would say, and he is a wonderful guy, a funny guy, and there is no guest I enjoy more than Anthony Pires. Anthony, welcome back to the old show.
Oh my goodness, Bob Smith, Joe McHugh himself is so happy to see you. This is Championship Wrestling presented by Bob Smith. How are you, my friend?
Imagine Championship Wrestling promoted by Bob Smith. What would be on that card? Silvano Souza versus who?
Antonio LaRocca. Antonio, like the old, who was that guy? Who was the guy?
Antonio.
Not Antonio LaRocca, but Antonio LaRocca.
Who was the promoter who would do the fake names?
Was it Tenla?
Bruno San Martino.
Yes,
right?
San Martino.
Sam Martino with an M, yeah.
Bob, it's an honor as always to talk to you. You've become a good friend over the years, and just talking old wrestling and listening to the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast each and every week puts a smile on my face, and I'm sure to your fans out there. So thank you.
Now, you're a man of distinction there in New England and Massachusetts. You mean to tell me you listen to this show every week? Is that for sure? Really?
Every single Friday at 6 a.m., I get my reminder that the Outdated Wrestling Hour has dropped, and because you're a friend and you pay me good money to listen, I listen to you first.
That's amazing. I appreciate that. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Bob, what you've done bringing back memories to me personally and the fans around who listen to you is worth its weight in gold. So thank you.
Well, you know what? Here's how I know the show's working. This just is simple. Nobody ever says no. When I seek out somebody to come on the show, they always come on. And one thing I do like about what I've been doing, and it's working somehow, is I'm presenting people that people may not know in the beginning, like yourself, like our friend Liam Savage, like Joe Puccio is my new co-host now. These are people that people didn't really know that well in the wrestling world, but they have a lot to say and they really know their stuff, like you do.
But you have no idea what it's like for me, how thrilling it is for me to talk to the editor-in-chief / writer of my childhood. I subscribed to the Weston magazines for 15 years. So I was well familiar with who Bob Smith was long before he ever picked up a microphone.
You cannot imagine how my knees knocked during my interview with those people. Because
I bet.
I remember I had met Apter in the 70s at that armory we were talking about in Albany. And he was a nice guy. We had a short conversation. That was hello, thank you, one of those deals. Here it is, 1988. And I see him sitting in his desk. And the first thing they did, they put me in a round robin circle with all the other editors. Apparently, it was a group think type of hire. In other words, if everybody in the group thought you were, well enough to do this, they'd hire you. So I wasn't just interviewed by Stu Sachs or Bill Apter. It was the whole staff, everybody that was there. It was a unique way to do it. I really appreciated it too. And then they had me write an article, and it was just to see what I knew. And I remember it was about Sergeant Slaughter. They gave me a scenario, and I said, "Oh, baby," because I was an AWA mark, right? So I boom, 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 Gary DeRushi, boom, 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 Ron Trongard, but every little obscure name I knew who was working there ended up in this article. And the next day he called me and said, "Would you like to work for us full time?" And it's funny, when I started there, I was a boxing wrestling hybrid because I'd done a lot of coverage of Mike Tyson and knew him personally. And I also helped us early on get a photo shoot done, coordinated with his team. So
forgive me, wasn't KO magazine part of the Weston?
KO it was. That's right. And another title.
Yep.
We had 2 titles, and later they bought the Ring.
Ring magazine.
Yeah. Which is now back. I don't know who's running it now. I noticed
De La Hoya bought it.
Yeah, but there's a new one now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there's a new one, and I have no idea if it's just digital or if it's a magazine or what, but I see it touted on Facebook. I want to look into that and find out more about it.
It's amazing how, to me, it's amazing how this little silly thing called pro wrestling can bring together a 52-year-old guy like me in touch with the editor of Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine that I read religiously.
It is amazing since I'm 106 now. So it's like, like I said, I'm so old, there's younger faces on the coins in my pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Bob, you may be old, but you are timeless.
My social security number is 13. You realize this? It's like, this is how old the man you're talking to is. but it feels like yesterday, man.
Yeah.
I don't feel any older. I'm
We
really
were talking,
lucky.
and we were talking. You're right. It feels like yesterday because we were talking just on email. Well, my cat is. Oh, hello, Hermione.
This happened, by the way, podcast fans out there listening. I can't tell you the number of animal cameos that have taken the last 3 years of this podcast. I'd say 1 out of every 3 guests, like you, if you're interviewing them at home, the dog or the cat are going to show up. And I love it. Because I'm a pet person. So he had a beautiful cat there, a multicolored tabby, and it was really, really nice cat.
Yes, that damn cat. That damn
That's
cat. Shut up,
that's
Mike.
okay. No problem.
But again, it's amazing how wrestling just binds us and
It really does.
gives us something to talk about. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you put a guy with a red MAGA hat next to a person with a blue Biden T-shirt, and they both love wrestling, you know what? They got no problems. They just want to talk wrestling. They want to watch wrestling together. I often say wrestling at times has saved my life, just in terms of, listen, this may shock you and the listeners of the Outdated Wrestling Hour, but I was not a cool guy in middle school and high school. You know when I was cool? I was cool when my door was closed and I would put on my dad's sport jacket and I would watch 605 Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I would wait for the Nature Boy Ric Flair himself to come out and speak to the masses. In my mind, Bob, 14, 15-year-old Anthony wasn't some nerd who occasionally got picked on. I was the wheelin', dealin', jet flying, limousine riding, kiss stealing son of a gun. I was cool in my little room when I was Ric Flair. And that's what wrestling means to me. That's what it's meant to me since I was 8 years old. It was mine. It's the one thing that was mine. And when I can share it with people, the funny thing is people don't like to admit to being wrestling fans, but as soon as they find out you're one, boy, they remember a lot from their childhood.
I think it's easier now, but I will say this. I graduated high school. I shouldn't say this out loud. I graduated high school in 1976, right?
90.
Right. Oh, God, stop it. Everybody's younger than I am. Anyway, that's why I'm doing the show. But anyway, back then, and I say this with confidence, I was not unpopular with the girls. I did fine, but me and my friends were big wrestling fans. And wrestling to the females at Catskill High School was female repellent.
Yeah.
They didn't, because you remember it was the bloody cover era.
Yep.
The big, fat, sweaty,
Bobby, what happened to
nasty
your face type thing? Yeah.
Right. That, but it's more than that. I think a lot of women looked at wrestlers like just these big, slobby, sweaty, Bulldog Brower or
Yeah.
that type. And they thought it was dumb, and they thought it was violent, and they thought it was seedy, and they thought it was grubby, and so we would steal away from the girls when we talked about wrestling. We didn't let them know. We didn't let anybody know. But our little secret society of guys who used to go to the cards, shoot, we walked to another county once, me and my best friend. Walked to another county to buy wrestling tickets.
Just to be there. Just
to be there. And I never forget it. Hudson High School.
Arena. Yeah.
Hudson High School in Columbia County. The main event was Dean Ho versus Big Bobby Duncombe. The co-feature was Killer Kowalski versus Tony Garea.
You know what? Tell you what, for a double feature, that's a damn good show. That's a
in
damn
high school,
good
absolutely it was, yeah. And I remember there were other stars on the show, so it was not. I'll tell it. Like I always say, in those early years, no matter where I went to wrestling, I was never disappointed. I never felt like I didn't get my money's worth. I was always excited, and it was even better in the big arena because they had the one big Klieg leg over the ring, and you look at the things like how big they actually were and how shiny their boots were, and it all seemed larger than life, even though it was in a grubby ring and in a dirty armory, But it was, to us, it was major league all the way.
Because remember, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, we had to watch wrestling on UHF. For you little kids out there, that we didn't have cable, we had to go to these little channels in other cities, which you could almost see it through the static and the snow. So the first time I got to see wrestling live, I mean, just seeing the boots in living color, like, wow, it's so
Right.
bright. It's so
Mhm.
bright.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, here's another memory I have. Now, the first wrestling federation I got in Schenectady, New York, which was near us, our local TV affiliate, got Pedro Martinez's. For some reason, they promoted in Albany, but the main focus was Buffalo, Cleveland,
Buffalo, yep.
right? But we got that, Johnny Powers, Eric the Red, Kurt Von Hess, Abdullah the Butcher, Ernie Ladd, beautiful Bruce Swayze, the Mongols with George Cannon, all those guys. So that was our show, and then it went off, right? Now, my dad, I don't know how he did this. My father built our house. He built the house next door. He built our garage. He was the most handy person in the history of anything, my father. So he went out and bought a rotating TV aerial antenna on
Okay,
top of
yep,
the garage.
yep,
All
yep.
right. We were lower middle class. I would put it that way. That's probably where our financial status was. But you could control this thing with a little dial and a little apparatus inside the house. It would make the antenna rotate. I found out that I could get the Utica TV station that was still showing the NWF, Pedro Martinez, on a Saturday afternoon. If I juggled it just right and it was snowy, I could watch the old show, the original show that I love. And sure enough, the first time I watch it, they show boy, my memory's good for this crap. They
I
show
don't know
they
what
show us they show a scene from the Civic Center in Utica of Waldo von Erich for no reason attacking Dominic DeNucci. And he hits him over the top of the head for no reason. So the start of a feud. I'm thinking, I'm the luckiest kid in our block. I'm
you got
seeing
to
this
see
from
it.
way up in Utica, and it's like, this is great. I'm seeing the ones I originally saw. I'm so happy. So stuff like that, some of my best wrestling memories, I'm telling you.
I will tell you this, my friend. It was probably March 1981, and it was raining. It was raining like hell out. And I was some typical kid watching Saturday morning cartoons. I'm 8 years old, and I couldn't go out and play because it was raining like cats and dogs. And I just kept the TV on, and the first thing that popped up was Championship Wrestling. And the first guy I ever saw on TV was as a wrestler?
You're gonna have to tell me.
Andre the Giant.
What a way to start. Wow.
It was a 6-man tag team match with Andre the Giant, Tony Gurria, and Rick Martel. And they were the champions. They were the tag team champions. And they took on Baron Cicluna. God, how do I remember this? From 43, 44 years ago.
Mhm.
Baron Cicluna, Johnny Rods, and Big Ron Shaw. That was the opening 6-man tag team match. And I saw Andre the Giant, and I said to myself, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And that began an uninterrupted love affair. I was 8 years old. I'm 50. I'm going to be 53 this year. And I have never let up even once.
I'll tell you what, I bet Shaw took the pin, that's all I know.
Might have
It's a
been,
good maybe
that I
Rods?
cannot remember. The
Yeah, maybe
the
Rods.
match is on YouTube, and I've watched it a few times.
Yeah, I would say because of the pecking order, I would say probably Shaw was the odd man out on that one.
Yeah, because Baron was the Baron from the Isle of Malta, of course. He
My
was a
all-time
favorite.
favorite my all-time favorite wrestler. I can't even tell you why. No, here's why. In 1975 in the Armory in Albany, I saw him almost start a riot by sneering at somebody. He didn't even say a word. He had a way of, and people underrate him for this. He had that look, like he was better than you, and he was disdainful of everybody. The cape didn't hurt. Remember the big velvet cape
Oh
he
yeah,
used to
oh
have?
god, yeah, oh god, yeah.
And, early Cicluna, let me tell you, early Cicluna from 66 to 75 was a good heel. He really was. He just stuck around in what people thought he was a jobber. He wasn't a jobber. Please get a history book. But
Well
there was just
deserving of his
something.
spot in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. And so does Johnny Rods. Johnny Rods is one of the most influential people in the history of the sport.
And back then, you would never have known it. Back then,
You
just
don't know it.
watching him
Yeah.
lose on TV every week. But I will say this. About 4 months after I watched that show on TV, I begged, pleaded with my parents, and they took me to my first wrestling match. Johnny Rods beat Pete Doherty in the first live wrestling match I ever saw.
Now, was that pre-character Pete Doherty?
I'm gonna say yes, just because
Yeah.
bear in mind, I'm 8 years old, so I don't
Right.
quite remember. I do. He was. Oh, I loved him because I hated him.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Doherty, later the Duke of Dorchester.
Yep, the
But
Duke.
Doherty, that was a late character for him. They changed him.
Right.
In the beginning, he was kind of like a white bread good guy. You know, he had the short hair and he was a, earnest competitor in the ring, kind of like John L. Sullivan or all the young guys were, and he was good. I think Doherty was good. You know who else was good? Davey O'Hannon was good. Real
Yes.
good. Real good.
Yes. Yes.
Not fair or decent. He was real good.
But I'll tell you the little story behind that first show I ever attended.
Okay.
Because I didn't realize that Andre didn't wrestle week after week after week. He was the attraction.
Right.
And I tuned in every week for the next month or two, waiting to see Andre show up again. But then one day, Vince McMahon, the guy who was only a commentator at the time, tells us of the tragedy, the injury that befell Andre the Giant, where the vicious Mongolian giant Killer Khan jumped off the top rope and broke his ankle. And from that day on, I was to this day, when I see Killer Khan, I get a chill because he's scared the living because he hurt Andre.
Mm-hmm.
But then they announced July 18th, 1981, Providence Civic Center. Oh, we have to go to this show. And then I find out Andre's wrestling Killer Khan. Bob, you have never seen a happier kid in his life than me at that arena that night watching. Now, granted, they went to a double disqualification, but Andre just beat the living crap out of him. And to have seen that man that big and that colorful, bear in mind, like I was saying before, I had to watch it on UHF or a black and white TV to see Andre in his bright blue trunks and his big shining boots. I've never seen a man that big before, and since that day, it's been off to the race. I've probably been over 400 shows in my life. Granted, not as many as you, I'm sure, because you got to cover them as press, and I get to cover AEW today as press, which is cool. But it's just it's magical, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It still is, and you bring back such good memories. WWF Killer Khan in the 80s was awesome, wasn't he? He really, in his subtle, realistic way, knew how to work a crowd. Those screeches and yells he would do as he was stomping his opponent into oblivion. Remember, he was just he was real good, real good.
And he had Fred Blassie talking for him on the interviews. He would sit there and froth at the mouth and screech and yell, "My man, Killer Khan, the most dangerous man in the world, says Andre the Giant. We're coming to kill you. We're going to kill you, Andre the Giant. We're going to break your other leg." I was hooked. I've always thought wrestling is my drug. Thank God I got into wrestling when I did, because this is my drug. I cannot stop, and I don't want to stop, no matter how silly the product might get. So no matter how many lulls there might be, I just can't stop, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really with you with that, because all the years when I wasn't in wrestling, between doing a Rizzy's podcast and leaving the magazines way back when, I continued to watch it religiously. I didn't stop. If it was Raw or SmackDown or whatever was on, I used to watch TNA too. I bought TNA pay-per-views.
Yeah.
I was still watching it. But you bring back such good memories of the Killer Andre. That was a tremendous feud.
And remember, about a month after the injury took place, Andre came out to be interviewed on crutches.
Right.
And Fred Blassie came out to yell at him, "Ah, my man." And then Khan came up from behind and swept the other leg, and Andre went down.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all like, "Andre's, oh my God, I couldn't believe somebody could put Andre on the ground."
He had been pretty impenetrable up to that point. That was the first chink in about 8 years of just total dominance for Andre. Because, Andre to get in the ring, he would do a 3-against-1 handicap match.
Yeah.
People would bounce off him, boing. Then he'd do the bit where he'd sit on, it's all over, but it would
It
be
was
against Pancho Valdez and Joe Turco and another person of that. But he was great. Andre was excellent against. Do you remember? Cut to about 83, he had a feud with Blackjack Mulligan.
Oh, yes. Yes, and Mulligan loaded up the glove on the angle on TV and punched him and then put the claw on him, and Andre bled, and they put the big
X on the screen, yeah.
big X on the
Mhm.
screen.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was great stuff. That was
It
great
was
stuff.
great stuff, and, they just matched up so well, size-wise and everything. That was a smart move on, like, both of the McMahon's part, because I think that, Blackjack had been in the Federation before as the Blackjacks with Lonzo,
Right.
right?
But
But this was really one of the first times he'd come in as a solo, and he was huge. I mean, he was just a massive man. Little different than what he had been doing in Florida previously, but you know what? It worked like gangbusters. I
and
remember seeing
And
a great match, 6-man at the Garden, where it ended in a DQ. I think it's just a wild brawl broke out between Andre and Mulligan in the ring, and he cut open Andre again.
Mulligan worked with Andre so good because I always thought Andre worked best against guys who weren't giants, but were more like vicious brawler heels that could get
Right.
the edge on him from time to time. I never saw, even though I went to 2 of their matches, I never really saw a great Big John Studd Andre the Giant match just because, for lack of a better term, we had a styles clash. It was a guy like Mulligan who could brawl, who could bleed, who could move, and most importantly, sell for the Giant.
Right,
That
right.
made him do his best stuff. Studd
You're right.
just couldn't do it, yeah.
No, I liked, Mulligan Andre way better than Stud Andre. It was, the body slam challenge, if you remember that, and all
Oh,
that
yeah.
other stuff, and then the WrestleMania thing. It was okay, but you know what? Didn't ring my bell either. It really
But
didn't.
I remember the Big John Studd and Ken Patera cutting Andre's hair?
I'll tell you what, I
Yeah.
was working at Record World in Poughkeepsie, New York at that point,
Mhm.
right? My district manager, who God rest his soul, is no longer with us, Pete, his name was, and he went to that card. He was
Really?
there that night, and he came back, he went, so he's talking to me, I'm behind the counter, I used to sell records, right? And he's going, "Bob, they cut his hair. They ganged up on him, and they cut his hair off." And he was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He was, like, thoroughly shocked at this.
If you
Thoroughly
go
shocked,
back
and that was a great angle.
if you go back and watch that, Bob, you'll notice the crowd's not booing. They're
No, they're
dead silent.
stunned.
They're stunned silent.
Yeah.
It was, for me as a kid, now this was '84, I was probably 12, maybe 11 or 12. It was uncomfortable. Because, yeah, I saw Andre hurt at the hands of Killer Khan. I'd never seen him humiliated.
Right, right.
And Bobby Heenan, John Studd, Ken Patera humiliated him.
Yes. Yes. And I think it was every bit as effective as, like, a big bloody brawl would have been, maybe
Huh.
more so. Because you know what? It was unique for WWF at that point. Who did a haircut? Yeah, I mean, in the South, they used to do these hair versus hair matches and stuff. But for the East Coast, I think
Right.
that was the first time that anybody used scissors in a ring.
That was my introduction to haircuts. And I was almost kind of surprised they never followed up on that and had like WrestleMania be a hair match or something like that. I just remember being stunned into silence. You know what other angles stunned me into silence too, which was uncomfortable at the time? Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka at Piper's Pit.
Yes.
Winning. And if you listen to that crowd, they're not booing. They're stunned because they'd never seen anything like that. Yes, of course, it's pro wrestling. We see gratuitous violence every single time the bell rings, but you never saw something uncomfortable. And I thought Snuka getting beaten with a coconut, having a banana shoved into his face, and just having Piper, and Piper did toe that line of race.
Well,
Piper
he
played-
absolutely in that angle he did. No question about it.
Yeah. And it was, to me, even at 11 years old, I was uncomfortable. And even to this day, I don't know how I should feel about that. I don't know.
But you can say that was the wrong thing to do because you know what? In any strata of entertainment or life, that's the wrong thing to do. It just is. You don't do that. And
But you know what I did do?
but you know what? Again, that's wrestling walking that tightrope. Just trying to make that. If he went any further, it would have been way bad. But he just danced on that tightrope, and people remember the smack with the coconut more than what he said, I think, at
Yep.
this point in wrestling history.
Yep.
They just remember the big brawl that happened.
You know what that angle did, though, Bob? It made me make my father take me to the Civic Center and put both of our asses in seats to see the Superfly get revenge. That's the beauty of what we saw.
Now, do you remember the match?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, my God. A wild double disqualification brawl. I don't think the match itself went about 2 minutes legally, but the whole thing went 15 minutes. There were chairs. First time I ever saw a table get involved, even though nobody went through a table. They brawled to the back, and then they came back with chairs, and Piper bled, Snuka bled. This was just an angle. And who came out later on but Bob Orton and the Tonga Kid to break things up, which led to a great tag team match a month later. Of course, we got a tag team match. Snuka and Tonga Kid beat Piper and Orton. Orton took the pin. It was unbelievable.
Yep. That's the goods right there. That sounds good. That sounds. There was another angle from Poughkeepsie. Do you remember Tonga Kid? Didn't he beat the crap out of Piper with a chair?
Yes.
Right around that same time period, right?
The angle was Snuka had been injured, and the Tonga Kid was kind of coming in to fight for his cousin's honor. And Vince McMahon, I remember, yelled, he's eating him up with the chair. Eating Piper up with the chair.
That's another. My district manager came into the office and said, he was wailing him with a chair, and he would not stop. He just kept going and going and going. I don't know. Piper wasn't unconscious at the end. And it was another effective Poughkeepsie, New York, Mid-Hudson Civic Center angle.
And to this day, you know my favorite tag team of all time will always be?
Now, that's a good question. Who would you like as your favorite tag team? Let me think. I'm going to go on a limb and say Atlas and Johnson.
Gurria Martel.
Gurria Martel, okay.
I'll tell you, one of the moments that made me mark out, I love the word, I'm not ashamed to use the word, it was the WWE Night of Champions 2007, which sadly was the night that Chris Benoit failed to show up. There was a tag team title match. Gurria and Martel were at ringside, and they got involved. And they knocked Deuce and Domino around for a few seconds and got to drink in the cheers of the fans. I went absolutely nuts. And that was the first time I ever saw a title change, when they lost to the Moondogs.
Right.
And Bob, I completely believed that the Moondogs were illiterate Appalachian savages that chewed dog bones and couldn't be controlled. And Captain Lou Albano found them in the forest and brought them to the tag team championship. I was such a kid. I was such a mark, but I loved every second of it.
There's another underrated name you pulled out of your hat. Tony Gurria. First of all, he was way more over than history says he was.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he was on 5 different tag team championship teams kind of maybe diluted, he's just a tag team guy. But I was around in 72 when he first showed up. And right out of Steve Ricard's Federation in Australia. And let me tell you something. I have never seen a guy that big throw a drop kick higher than young Tony Gurria. He was a really good athlete. You know who his first tag team championship partner was?
Hold on. I know it was Haystacks Calhoun.
That's exactly right. And you know what?
Yep.
That televised match is one of the most exciting things I've ever seen on wrestling TV. The crowd went ape. And they had an ending segment like nothing I'd ever seen. It was Vince McMahon holding a mic, surrounded by, I'd say, teenage and college age boys, men. We've just seen history take place here he didn't ever mention the city they were in, but we're excited about it. Are you excited about it? And the fans all went, yeah. And I'm telling you, riveting television. Everybody believed, everybody loved it. The whole crowd was jubilant. It was one of the most perfect wrestling scenarios I've ever seen on TV. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
You're hitting me right here, Bob. And
the pinfall, it was Haystacks covering. I think it was Fuji or Tanaka at that point that they beat, and then Gurria stands on Haystack's back and puts his fists in the air as the count is being made. Magic, man.
I-
Just simple, easy story, not overly booked, and people believed then, and I miss those days.
Oh, as much as believe me, Bob, I love today. God, I love what these kids are doing today, but they don't make me believe the way the old guys did. Maybe it's because I was young and naive, but it was
No,
such magic.
it doesn't help that after a PLE, they have a press conference where they, well, our storylines, blah blah blah. It's Triple H is, blah 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 blah. And I'm thinking, oh man, just throw away this suspension of disbelief. Just throw it out overboard. I don't know what to say because it's not hurting anything.
No, but
Wrestling's never been as popular as we sit here talking about. I don't think in terms of what they're making, it's insane.
it's not. And I'm so glad for the guys making the money today because
Yeah, me too. You know what? If
So-
they're making if the wrestling roster in WWE is making good livings and they don't have to worry about health insurance and all that stuff, God
Without-
bless every one of them. It's
without
about
having-
time.
without having to kill themselves. Did you see the stats from like the first 5 or 6 WrestleManias? How many of those guys have passed on
Mm-hmm.
due
Yeah.
to either, due to, let's just say due to drugs, due to mysterious heart attacks that took place. And the fact that these guys now get an easier lifestyle and it's to me, it's wonderful.
Well, it wasn't just all the extracurricular activities. Let's talk mid '80s. They were working those guys to death. They were doing. Some guys were doing 3 shots in a day. It
You
was
know what?
insane. They had
Yeah.
them touring so hard and so much that I would be privy to this because I'd hear after talking to wrestlers. Bill, I'd love to talk to you, but I'm on I'm in a payphone in Altoona, Pennsylvania, heading for Boston, and then we got to go to Philadelphia if there's something like that. It's just
I heard
amazing.
stories about I heard stories about how guys would do the matinee show in, say, Long Island, and then they would go to Boston, and the guy who wrestled the opening match, the 2 guys that wrestled the opening match, would then have to get the hell out of there and
Right.
get to like Springfield so they could be in the main event that night in Springfield. But that's how they had to do it because that's where the money was. If you didn't
Right.
wrestle, you didn't work.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, they've finally figured out a way that they don't have to kill these guys in terms of scheduling. They usually, and these days, I think they get holidays off. It's just so much better now.
And
So much more humane.
I got to give Eric Bischoff some credit for that because he ushered in one of the eras of big money contracts guaranteed,
Right.
and he helped a lot of guys live a longer life.
That's nice. I grow more in admiration of Eric Bischoff every day.
Hmm.
I've heard him say some things recently that I found inspiring and true, and he's turned out to be probably a really cool guy. I would always conflate his characters with who he was.
Yep.
Like the smarmy businessman type. And when I met him, when I worked for WCW, I think he came off to me a little bit like the smarmy businessman. Hi, Bob. How are you? One of those deals. But I'm hearing him lately, and I think he's kind of the voice of reason in the pro wrestling world these days.
And I'm kind of proud to say he's a bit of a friend of mine. So
Mhm. Yeah, you told me that. Yeah.
that makes me kind of proud. He's a great guy. Every time I get the chance to talk to him, he's just the most down to earth human being you'll want to meet.
And if he sees something out in the wrestling world that offends him, he'll speak out. It's one of the things I like about him. Through either on a podcast or something else, he will speak out. If he sees something that he feels is wrong, he'll just say, "Hey, that's not cool." And I think wrestling
right.
needs that. They need the veterans.
now,
They need
Bob-
the veterans to come out and talk like that.
So now, Bob, I'm going to tell you, I told you how I started being a fan. I'm going to tell you what kept my fandom going. Channel 25 out of Boston. For some reason, I will never know why, I will never know how, but I'll always thank them for it. In late 82, picked up World Class Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, I know. I used to see it where I was in upstate New York. It was on all the time.
It was, and that, I'll tell you, I will tell you this, from late 82 to about the time the Iron Sheik beats Bob Backlund, I would be watching World Class but checking in on the WWF. Because, I knew the WWF would just have their, squash matches of the week, trying to sell tickets for the Boston Garden Providence Civic Center. But by God, on World Class Wrestling, you had main events, the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs, Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez versus Iceman King Parsons and, the Junkyard Dog. I mean, it was incredible. And that, I don't want to say that revitalized, but that furthered my love of wrestling. And then my family got cable, WTBS, and it was off to the frickin' races. And it was Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Watts' Wrestling. I couldn't get enough. And to this day, you know what, Tom? Bob, I hate to admit this to you because I'm, we are mature men of the world. You know what time I got up this morning?
Just say it.
About 4:00 Eastern. You know why? So I could watch New Japan Pro Wrestling show.
I believe it.
It's a sickness. It's a sickness. I can't stop.
Nah, don't stop. Don't stop. If
I
it makes you
never
happy,
will. I never will.
You're not hurting anybody, my friend. You
I never
definitely not
will.
hurting anybody. I
Never
will say this about World Class. You bring back good memories for me, too. I'm in upstate New York. I'm in my first newspaper job, right? And I think Channel 6 out of Schenectady was showing World Class. But this is amazing. Around 82, they did a couple of cards in Albany, New York. They came all the way up to Albany, New York to promote in a round circle called the Starlight Latham Theater. It was like a theater in the round. A perfect place for pro wrestling.
Okay.
And we went. We saw Kevin Hart and Eric versus Abdullah the Butcher and Brody and all these other guys. It was awesome. It was an amazing event.
By the time World Class got around to coming to Providence, it was 86. The glory days were kind of over. Kerry Von Erich was already out with his motorcycle injury. And it made me sad because when I got there, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. In a 12,000 seat arena, there might have been 300 people there.
Wow.
Might have been.
Yeah.
And you know what we saw? You know what we got to see that night? Brody and Abdullah the Butcher fight all over the arena. And I'm talking in places where fans weren't. They went for about 20 minutes just bleeding and biting and forking, F-O-R-K-I-N-G.
Right.
Forking each other in the head. What a money's worth we got of that. We also saw some kid named the Dingo Warrior.
Yeah, just starting out. That's right.
Yep.
Well, no, actually, he'd been around a little bit, but they turned him into Dingo Warrior. Gary
Dingo
Hart,
Warrior?
no?
Oh, yes. Gary Hart was the guy that presented him. And Gary Hart is always going to be on my Mount Rushmore of managers.
Me too. Oh, my gosh. First of all, he made you think it was real. Gary Hart made you think it was real. He talked differently than any other manager in the history of the sport. He was cerebral in a way that nobody else was.
And he could project evil. Look, the other three guys on my list are Jim Cornette, Bobby Heenan, and Paul Heyman, all of whom are great managers, but they're all managers who you like because they were so damn funny.
Paul Heyman is one of the most remarkable people in wrestling history because, first of all, right now, he's still working. He may have set an all-time record for longevity in terms of doing what he does. Because I saw him originally in, I think it was Bob Raskin's NWF in the early 80s, around 81, 82, and he's still working now. That is a long time, man. I mean, he's got to be one of the most longest lived careers of wrestling. But here's the point I want to make. In his voice, and I remember talking to him many times on the phone when I was with PWI. I knew him ECW too. He would absorb wrestling history like a sponge. There was a little Eddie Creechman in his delivery. There's a little Bobby Heenan in his delivery. There was a little Fred Blassie in his delivery. He soaked up information like a sponge. He may be the most learned historian that didn't write history. You know what I'm saying? And he used what he knew and morphed it into his own original character. There's nobody like Paul Heyman. Nobody.
You can't write wrestling history without chapters on Paul Heyman and the influence he had on people.
Yeah.
But again, he was so entertaining. You like him. But going back to Gary Hart was just evil. brother, when he looked into that camera the way I'm looking at you now, and let me tell you something, Dusty Rhodes, you are nothing but a yellow-belly coward, and the great Kabuki is coming to take you down, Daddy. That's
Gary Hart.
That was Gary
Well
Hart.
done. That was great. I enjoyed that.
Gary Hart. That was Gary Hart.
Yeah.
Jesus, just you are punching me right in the freaking feels today, Pop. You are absolutely.
This is the idea of this show. I like to have more upbeat shows. I never want to do a shoot show. I don't care. I don't care what one guy in the locker room said about another guy. I don't care that somebody was spotted in a club. I don't care. I don't care. It's what's in the ring that matters to me. It's the psychology of wrestling that matters to me. It's the meat and potatoes that I like. I don't want I don't want 2 slices of cake afterwards. You know, it's you know what I'm saying? It's like there's plenty of shoot shows. I don't care about that. I just don't. It's not my style.
The first time I ever felt cool as a wrestling fan was in '85 when the first WrestleMania was coming around because everybody was into Mr. T. All the boys were into Mr. T. All the girls were into Cyndi Lauper. And they all knew that I was the wrestling guy. So I'll tell you, between February and March of 1985, everyone sought me out and I got to pontificate as to what the storyline was going on. I'd like to think I'd like to think I turned about 20 or 30 people onto the first WrestleMania.
You know what? Let's talk about something that from that era.
Yeah, please.
Who was the genius that picked Wendy Richter? Because she was different. She was taller. She looked younger. She looked more hip. She wasn't from that Moolah mold of female wrestlers. And even though she had worked with Moolah, there was something different about Wendy Richter. And somebody saw that. And I'd like to know how that came about.
I think, and I this might be revisionist history from the person who's telling the story, but believe it or not, I think it was Moolah that picked Wendy.
Really?
I think Moolah presented Wendy to Vince, and Vince is like, we can do something with her.
Because in the beginning, she had a cowboy hat, the usual shtick. Yeah. You know, you had to be somebody or at some regional type. But when she showed up with Lauper, she looked like the personification of girls just want to have fun. Right?
An 80s pop star.
Right.
And, do you remember how the world stopped that night in July 1984 when Wendy Richter challenged Moolah for the title?
I do. I absolutely do.
MTV, which was the biggest thing in the frickin' world, Bob.
Right then it was.
And pro wrestling was getting covered? Are you kidding me? And then 6 months later, God, the Roddy Piper Hulk Hogan match. I thought Madison Square Garden was going to collapse that night. The crowd was going absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
For both of those matches. That's how it hooks you. You believe. I have 20 years later, I know that Captain Lou Albano met Cyndi Lauper on an airplane, introduced, I think, by, God, who was the guy that followed Rezzi's show on WGBB? I forget. Either way.
Oh, the old jukebox guy, the old
the
music guy. I know who he's talking about. I can't remember his name.
He introduced Lauper to Albano, and we're off to the races. I mean, imagine if that guy hadn't made the introduction. We don't have the rock and wrestling. Yes, I'm sure Vince makes wrestling big, but man, you don't get Mr. T. And as silly as it sounds to people listening today, God, when Mr. T jumped the railing that night, the month before WrestleMania, to defend Cyndi Lauper and help Hulk Hogan, tell you what, me and my other 12-year-old buddies who were having sleepover that night, we went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely freaking crazy.
That period showed you the difference between Vince McMahon Sr. and Vince McMahon Jr., and I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
I guess it was around 81, 82. Remember the Lawler-Kaufman feud?
Yes.
That was originally pitched by Bill Apter to Vince McMahon Sr.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it just sounds that won't work for us. Meanwhile, they go to Memphis and everybody goes bananas. A couple years later, Vince is booking and you have Mr. T, you have Cyndi Lauper, you have the football players who's the second WrestleMania and things like that. Liberace, Muhammad Ali, keep going. Steve Allen, even. I mean, it was just
My mother watched WrestleMania 1. You know why? Because Liberace was there.
are you kidding? My mom, when she never went to concerts, when Liberace came to Albany, she had to go see Liberace. Boy, he had a hold on women, didn't he? He was so popular with the ladies.
And you can, and if you watch WrestleMania 1, you can kind of see it. Big smile, flamboyant. You could see how popular he was.
He really was. He's an entertainment legend, one of a kind. And you know what? A fine pianist. You know, if you have an ear and listen to him play, he was a magician on the keyboards. He really was.
Not ashamed to say that I became a Liberace fan after that because I listened to him.
You actually listen to the music?
Yeah, I love it. Today I
Yeah.
love Liberace's music.
I wish there, you know what? Imagine today in 2025, somebody becomes popular for being good on the piano. It's almost unfathomable now because the way
Right.
pop music is presented now. But then people would appreciate a guy like Roy Clark, who was a virtuoso with the guitar, right? He would also, you know, be on hee-haw and stuff. But when he sat there with a guitar, you were mesmerized. Nobody has an appreciation for raw musical ability, even vocally. You have to wrap it up in some kind of a persona now, you know? It's all different.
You said hee-haw 4 years ago. My wife and I went to Nashville
Right.
for a vacation. Of course, you know, she did sightseeing. I went to Ric Flair's last match in SummerSlam. But we went to the Hee Haw Studios. You would not believe how small that was.
Oh, shoot.
When I watched as a kid, I thought it was this, oh my God, this amazingly big studio. But it was like maybe it seated maybe 25, 30 people in fold-out chairs, and there was this little stage, but they made it look so goddamn big. Excuse my language.
No, that's the magic of radio and TV because I've been in big radio and TV stations during my life.
Yep.
And the illusion goes, the illusion's over. Even when I went and saw David Letterman at the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It wasn't like I did it twice. It wasn't like you would think it was. Like you kind of had to look over things to see them there, and there were big monitors in the way, and it didn't look like you'd imagine it felt like when you watch on TV. You know, it was different. It was more cold. You know what I mean? It wasn't audience friendly because the audiences on TV shows are basically a prop for the production, you know? So I didn't say it was bad. I would say that it was just hard to watch looking at it from a balcony. I was in the balcony and it was hard to look down on the stage and see them, but they had monitors up so you could look at the monitors if you couldn't see everything. But I didn't expect that, you know, because of the blocking for TV.
That's an experience you got to have.
Yeah, twice.
Right. Like people, you know, whenever I go to a show, I've been to a lot of shows, and I don't think I've sat ringside maybe 4 times out of 400 times I've been to wrestling. And people are like, "Oh, you should get like, you know, do you spend money for the big seats?" No, I just want to be in the building. I don't care if at WrestleMania 14, I was in the very last row of the Fleet Center. And I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to be there and experience it.
Absolutely. Oh, shoot. You know, when the Mets were in the playoffs, I sat in the loge seats that were like, they used to be an overhang from the upper deck. I didn't care. I was in the building. I didn't care how good or bad the seat was. I was there, you know, for the Robin Ventura home run, you know.
I was upper deck for the 1998 and 2001 World Series. Do you think I care that I couldn't see the batter's box perfectly? No.
You were there, man. You were there. That's what counts.
I saw the Tino Martinez and Chuck Knobloch back-to-back home runs to bring the Yankees back in Game 1 against the Padres, and I saw Clemens shut down the Diamondbacks. A year earlier, ready for this? The Clemens throwing the bat at Piazza?
Right.
I was at that game. We got tickets from a casino. I was sitting right in back of Penny Marshall and Rosie O'Donnell, and right in back of me, about 5 rows down, was Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Swear to God.
Holy smokes. Yeah. Wow.
They were lucky to be in my presence.
You said it. Well, I tell you what, we got some great memories. You see, this is my favorite kind of show to do. It is.
Yeah.
It just is. It's like we could go on for another hour just spouting stuff, easy, simple stuff that we've been through, with
Exactly,
wrestling.
Bob.
It's great.
I don't remember what I had for breakfast on Friday, but if you want to ask me to do a review of the July 18th, 1981 WWF show at the Civic Center in Providence, I'll tell you everything, including the autograph I got from SD Special Delivery Jones, who won that night.
Who do you beat?
Strong Kobayashi.
He
All right.
beat Strong Kobayashi?
He beat Strong Kobayashi.
Wow.
Here's the lineup just to impress you. Pete Doherty lost to the Johnny Rods. SD Jones beat Strong Kobayashi. Magnificent Morocco beat Rick Martel by countout to retain the Intercontinental title. Pedro Morales and George the Animal went to a double DQ. Andre beat Killer Khan by DQ. Bob Backlund pinned Sergeant frickin' Slaughter to retain the WWF title. And Kurt Hennig and Dominic DiNucci went to a draw with the Moondogs for the tag team title. I remember that because it was yesterday.
I remember the worst wrestling match I've ever seen, and there was no excuse for it. Let me explain this one. This is in the Armory in Albany.
Good.
I believe it's 1977, and it's Ivan Putski versus George Steele.
Oh, God.
They get in the ring, and Steele's doing his crazy man thing, right? He's, he keeps, every time Putski looks at him, he backs up. So they go to do the referee's stance, and Steele runs out of the ring. Referee starts counting, right? 1, 2, 3. And then very slowly, and he eventually gets in the ring. And again, they go toward a referee stance. This time they do lock up, and Steele goes and runs out of the ring again. Right? Okay.
That's what he did. Yep.
Here's a third time. They get into a referee stance. They lock up. Steele gets out of the ring, but this time he doesn't get in by the 10 count. He gets counted out, and the fans go, yay. And I'm like, there was no match.
They didn't touch.
They touched twice. There was literally no action. But Albany was such a good guy territory, like you've never been at, that they were ecstatic. They didn't care that he won. Ivan won.
Oh, ready for this? One thing about the Pedro Morales match from that first night, George the Animal went to the wrong turnbuckle. So when he went and bit the turnbuckle, he just pulled out foam rubber padding. And then he went to the other turnbuckle, and out came the
fluff.
The fluff. Yeah, the fluff.
Then he could stick in Pedro's eyes, right?
Yeah. Oh my God! What a trip down memory lane we're having tonight. My goodness.
Without notes, fans, this is what I'm proudest about this podcast. I have, you know what I have? I have the name Anthony Pires on a piece of paper. I'm going to show you the Anthony Pires, and that's all it says. This is how I do my shows. This is how I choose to do my podcast. You know what? In 1981, you've heard of the price. In 1981. A crowd of 16,462 was at Boston Garden to see. Once a listener wrote to me on Apple reviews and said, meh, was a review for me. It's the one bad review I've ever gotten for the show. He goes, he didn't remember when Tito Santana was Intercontinental Champion in 1982. I don't know if I can trust a guy like that. And I'm like, dude, man does not live by wrestling alone. If you think I have a abacus in my head telling me every freaking wrestling title and who won it and who they beat and what the date was and what the attendance was. Sorry, Charlie. You know what? I have memories in my head, but not specifically dates that go with them and all that stuff.
By the way, a little scoop for the listeners. I finally, because of adfreeshows.com, the Conrad Thompson Network, I finally had a chance to talk to Tito Santana, and I asked him the question that I've been dying to know for years. Remember when he lost the title to Randy Savage?
Yes.
And a year later, when Danny Davis was doing his gimmick as the heel referee, they pushed the fact that Davis was the corrupt official in the match where Tito lost the title.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a fortuitous happenstance. At the time, what I always want to know was, did they do that match with Davis as the referee? So a few months later, when they started the angle, they could, use that. Tito said, nope, it was just fortuitous planning.
Right. Wow.
Davis just happened to be the third guy in the ring that night.
Interesting. A while back, I wrote an article about 4 or 5 months ago, and the article was simply Tito Santana was the Larry Fine of the WWF, and I'll explain why that means. He was the glue. He was the conduit between the late 70s product, moving forward into 82, 83, 84, the expansion, and he was one of the major players in that expansion.
Right.
People tend to rewrite history. Tito Santana was a very important star in WWF history. There's no question in my mind. Do you agree with that?
Oh my God, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, be honest with you, Bob. Tell me a bigger feud between the middle of 84 to the middle of 85 than Tito versus Greg Valentine.
Oh yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? Yeah.
That went on for a year, and it never got old. It never got old.
People didn't get sick of that one. You know why? They're meant for each other. They knew how to work. They knew how to work.
True
Greg
story.
Valentine, let me give him a plug too.
Yep.
If he wrestled 2 bad matches in his life, that's 2 more than I saw.
I saw Greg Valentine wrestle Tito Santana about a week after the Tito won the title back from him in that steel cage match. Because they hadn't replaced the belt yet, Tito's belt that he brought to the ring was still broken from when Greg Valentine slammed it against the cage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I discovered in the last couple of years? That old armory is still being used for wrestling all the time up in Albany. They do their own. There's an indie promotion that promoted there. I think MLW did some matches there. I think maybe even, I don't know if it was the NWA or TNA, but they were there too. So on occasion, I think they have monthly indie cards there. I want to go back. That was the place that I loved so well, with the 75-cent Tobin's First Price hot dogs and the table with the wrestling magazines on it, the Kaiser books that had all the results in the back. Yeah, memories I will never, ever forget. So if they're doing wrestling there, first of all, it gives me an excuse to go see some relatives I don't see a whole lot. And secondly, I want to go sit ringside at the place I grew up watching wrestling. I intend to do it sometime this year.
It feels, it's comfort food. It's comfort food. When I'm down, Poppins, if I can't sleep and I have insomnia for 4 hours, I'll put in WrestleMania 5 and enjoy every single match that show had to offer. Or SummerSlam 92 or whatever it was.
I've been watching my Walmart DVD. I got a copy of WrestleMania 3 for $3 at the Walmart DVD store. They had a section with a bin, and I got it out of a bin. I went, this is great. And you know what? I watched that one all the time. I like to look at the Andre match, and I like to look at Harley Race beating the Junkyard Dog, because to me, that was Harley's last big moment in his wrestling career. It really was. If you think about what happened after that, he did have a run with Hogan, right after the Andre thing was done.
Untelevised, yeah.
But also that's where he hurt himself too. And I think he just wasn't the same wrestler after that point when he had that abdominal injury or whatever it was.
But boy, knowing now what I didn't know then. Remember when he came back from the injury and wrestled Haku at
Royal Rumble? For the King thing, yeah.
And I'm just thinking, my God, those two men together could kill 85% of the world's population. Just the two of them. I met Haku about a year and a half.
Me too. I met him years ago. He was
the nicest guy you
ever want to meet. Yeah, we hear about what a tough guy he is, but yet to me, he was just fabulous. He's a great guy.
He was so nice to me. I'm like, I'm expecting this guy to bite my face off.
I'm assuming that he's the type of fellow you don't want to cross, though.
Oh no!
We'll put it that way. Don't cross a guy like that. You got to come clean with a guy like that.
I insulted him. I threw some fruit and tomatoes at him. And when he caught me, he said, I said, my name is Bob Smith. So
I'm dead now. Thanks a lot. I need some posters backstage now, right? Jeez. Oh man. Well, anyway, these old school memories, man, they never get old. And I want to thank you for being here. I never not have fun with you, Anthony. This is a privilege to have you back here.
Bob, it's way more a privilege to be with you, because I'm being punched in the face with my memories, and it's just making me happy. So
yeah, me too.
Thank
Me
you.
too.
Thank you.
This is one of the most enjoyable shows I've ever done because it's like we just started talking, folks. And
This
when we started to go down
was
memory
no fun.
lane, I'm 16 again, I'm 15 again, I'm 18 again. It's like I don't feel my age. I don't, and it's fun not to feel your age, right? Right when
Yeah.
you talk about this stuff, don't you feel younger?
Oh my God, yes, I do. Whenever I'm in an arena on my feet cheering, I'm 8 years old again.
But you know what? Before I let you go, let me ask you one question about the current WWE.
God, please.
Who's your favorite stars right now? Who do you like? Who you
Right.
go? Oh boy, I want to see them.
I will pay money to see CM Punk. I will pay to see Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. I think
Okay,
though all three of those guys are absolutely in freaking incredible.
I
Love them.
am I am a giant Rhea Ripley fan.
Oh, if we're talking women, Rhea
Yeah,
Ripley and Liv Morgan. Rhea Ripley
right.
and Liv Morgan.
Hey, Io Sky is creeping into my psyche. She's good. She's real good. And you know, as far as the guys go, my taste is a little different. I am a huge, and I'll admit this, I probably shouldn't. LA Knight
Right.
is my boy. He,
Yeah.
there's something about him. He's so old school. He's new school. And you know, he
I
puts on
love
a good
him.
match too.
I love him because I watched him in Billy Corgan's NWA when they were
Me
on.
too. Eli Drake. Yeah.
I'm like, there's something about this guy that I really freaking like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, here's one thing about his WWE persona though. He's an absolute loner. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
Like he
Which
doesn't
is
have a
good.
tag team friend. He doesn't have anybody close to him. He is the ultimate loner when you think about his character. Like other people, he's not part of a faction. He's not
Right.
part of this or that.
Right. Yep.
It's kind of unique because it's like he's singular. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. I'm glad to see him get
I think it's
belt
good because
back again.
they can always put him in a main event spot, and I would love to see God, I would love to see him as champion someday. And if he wins a world title, it'll be at a SummerSlam. It won't be at a WrestleMania. I
I
love that.
get I get the feeling that Mr. Fatu is taking that title though.
Especially because he lost last night at Saturday's main event. And did you see? By the way, your Mets are having a WWE night with
I
Mister
saw that.
Jey Uso.
I
So
saw
yeah,
that. Yeah.
you gotta have him as champion that night.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
got baseball coming up. My
We got
God,
baseball coming up. You're right.
life is
What
good.
do you think? The Sox going to be all right this year?
I'm a Yankee fan. Frick the
Oh,
Red.
I thought you were a Sox fan.
I hate the Red Sox.
But you're a football Boston
Okay,
fan, right?
all right, ready for this? Ready for this?
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Okay.
all right.
You can explain it.
Let me have the floor for a moment. I am 1978. I just turned 6 years old. Now, my father, Bob, worked 20 hours a day building his business. So my father was always a kind of a benevolent figure that wasn't around that much. I was raised by a lovely Polish mother who's still with us today. God, I had her corned beef and cabbage yesterday. But one day in October, I'm in first grade, Bob, 1978. I come home and my father's car is in the driveway. And I'm like, my God, my father's home. What is it a holiday? Did I miss something? My father took the afternoon off to watch the Red Sox Yankees
Oh yeah.
frickin' Dent playoff game.
Right. Right.
Now, bear in mind, I'm 6 years. I have no idea what baseball is. I have no idea. But my father worked, and by the way, my father still alive to this day. He's 81 years old with two replaced knees. He's still kicking ass and taking names. But in when I was 5, 6 years old, my father was, for lack of a better term, Bob, he was angry because he worked 20 hours a day building his business.
Hmm.
I didn't have great memories when I was a little kid, just because of how hard he worked to put me through school, by the way, debt free, to leave me with a legacy that when he passes on, I'm going to be okay. But 6-year-old Anthony didn't think that way. So I see my father watching the Red Sox Yankee game. Of course, I'm going to sit with my father. When the Yankees won the game, my father jumps up in celebration. And Bob, I swear to God, that was the first time I remember my father being happy. watching the Yankees win that game. Now, he was a Yankee fan because his uncles and his father came over from, Portugal. So they all immigrated to New York and Connecticut. My grandfather eventually came to Rhode Island, but they all fell in love with the immigrants like DiMaggio, like Berra, people like that. So they instilled in my young 8-year-old father the love of the Yankees. So here's the funny part. The next day, I have no idea what baseball is. I go to school the next day figuring all the kids are happy because the Yankees beat the Red Sox. Bob, I got the absolute living hell beat out of me in the schoolyard
Oh
by
yeah,
the
I
kid.
bet. I'll
By the
bet.
kid. And from that moment on, hardened first grade Anthony hated the Red Sox because their fans beat me up.
That makes
So that's
sense.
a Yankee fan.
But let me backtrack a moment about what you just said. That was freaking beautiful, man. Your memories of your dad and how he helped you. I mean,
And
that's
he's
beautiful.
still
That's beautiful. I love hearing stuff like that. I mean, that it inspires me, and because love is the big deal in life, and you better take time to enjoy it when you have it. And I think that's a wonderful story you just told. I really do.
and you know what he did for me 18 years after that game?
What's that?
Took me to the 96 World Series.
Really?
We were together when Boggs jumped on the horse to celebrate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't that's a classic moment in your life.
I'm going to
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because you know what? Well, you're explaining so plaintively what your dad was like, and I'm sitting here getting choked up because it's like, you know what? That's the
Bob,
stuff. That's the stuff, man.
he's still like this. He's still feisty. He still loves his baseball. He still loves.
No, I get it. I get it. Don't. It's all right, man. It's okay.
I'm going to stop. 'Cause-
Listen, all of us get their baseball from their dads, right?
Yeah.
I got mine. The reason I'm a Met fan is because he was a Met fan. He was a Dodger fan who was burst into tears when they sold the team, or they moved away to Chavez Ravine and left the no National League team in New York. So all the Dodger fans switched to the Mets. And, the first time you ever saw a major league ballpark, you were with your dad. I'm sure it was the same with you, right?
Yeah, funny thing is, first time I saw a major league ballpark was Yankee Stadium, 1979. We lost to the Twins 5-4. A year later, he took me to Fenway Park for the first time. They played the Twins, and the Red Sox lost to the Twins 5-4. Why I remember this stuff, I don't remember. I don't
Because you got a memory like mine. I don't know my birthday, but I can tell you about the time. I can tell you about the time in '81. I think it was that a bunch of us went to Yankee Stadium for the last game. No, we were fans. We saw the Yankees against the California Angels, and it was October 4th, and it was 70 degrees. We drive back upstate, and a blizzard broke out. A legitimate blizzard on October 4th, which is unheard of for that time of year, even in upstate New York. And it was a major catastrophe. All the power lines went down, and it was an amazing experience. Within 4 hours of being at a baseball game and warm, we were looking for shovels. And I was working at the newspaper at that point, and I had to go to another town to do the paper. The other paper would allow us to go in and make our newspaper at their plant because ours was snowbound. Incredible memories. The stuff you just don't forget stuff like that.
God, Bob, I'll tell you what, something right now, I'm okay right now, but in an hour from now when I'm sitting in my chair
Right.
by myself, I'm going to have a good cry. Thank you, Bob.
What? That's not my intention.
No, but it's a good, I've had a good life, Bob. I've had a good life.
Dude, I look back at what I've done. I was with PWI. I sang 10 times with BB King. I've had wonderful relatives. Yeah. I've had a great wife. I've had all kinds of things. I have been absolutely blessed 10 times over. And I was born seriously premature. I was out of the chute at 7.5 months, at 1 pound 8 ounces, and they called in the priest to do the last rites, and for some reason I went like this, and my dad says, "Oh my God, he's a lefty," and I pulled through. So the fact that I was on the verge, coming out of the chute, and I've lived this long, I'm grateful for every moment I have left, man. I'm
And
telling you.
and the world got 6 more weeks of you, so that's good.
Yeah, 6 more weeks. That's right. That's not good for the world, but it was good for me anyway.
It's
We'll
good
put it
it's
that way.
good for me. It's good for me, Bob. I cannot thank you enough for having me on the show.
Well,
This
listen,
is
before we
therapeutic.
depart,
Oh, yeah.
give them the Cook's tour. Let them know where you can find you, hear your
Oh,
work, everything else.
my goodness. You can find me on Facebook, obviously, Anthony Pires, AnthonyPires, or you can go to good old X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. I am at Hoboken Cobbler. I'm at Hoboken Cobbler at That's Mr. Porky to you. And as a fan of the 80s cinema, you understand what that's Mr. Porky to you means. And if I want to hear more of me, every single Wednesday night on PWInsiderElite.com, myself and Corey Strode break down AEW Dynamite. And yes, we try to make it more entertaining than the show itself, and I think we succeed very nicely. And I think Corey's set for a entertainment show with you, isn't he, Bob?
Actually, a wrestling show. We tried to get him back here recently for a show about wrestling comic books,
Excellent.
and unfortunately, he had a health problem at that point. We have to reschedule, but we'll get him on, and he knows I want to have him on. So
Corey is my best friend who I've never met.
you've never met him in person?
He and I have been doing like what we're doing right now every week for 5 years, and we talk offline all the time. We've just never actually met. When WrestleMania comes to Minneapolis or SummerSlam, yes, I'll be crashing on his couch. He doesn't know that yet,
but does he know that yet? Right?
He doesn't know it yet. It's happening, goddamn.
I cannot tell you how delighted I am that you're back on the show, and I'm sure our listeners are too. And the numbers prove it. Whenever you come on the show, we get great results. And
I have one last question.
I cannot thank you enough for all the good times and all the good vibes, and it's just been awesome, man. I'm really thrilled that you're back here again.
I love being back here, but one last question, Bob. Who is the defending Outdated Wrestling Hour Trivia Champion? Hear that, Liam?
Me. Yeah, Liam. Where are we going to do a show? What did we do our last show? We did a second show with you two, right? And I don't remember what it was about. What was it?
We did Yay and Nay. We did Yay and Nay.
Yay and Nay. That was fun too. I like having you guys do some sort of a different type of show. But you know what? We should do a second. The quiz. We got to do the quiz. Another test of knowledge. The first one was a lot of fun, and
always a blast.
We're gonna have to do that again.
I love it to death.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? And there's another thing I love about doing this podcast. Liam was on a show called Front Row Material, but I don't know how many people actually heard it and in his role on it. But I'm giving him a chance to be heard by more people. People like Joe Puccio, who has never been on a podcast before, and yourself and other people who people might not have heard of, but I think should be heard. Because you guys know so much about wrestling. It's crazy. So to me, I'm the lucky one because I get to talk wrestling with all you guys.
Bob, believe me, I'm the lucky one talking to the editor and writer of my childhood. So it's always an honor.
It amazes me of all the things in my life that I wish I hadn't kicked to the curb. Trust me, man, when I left that company, I kicked wrestling to the curb. And then Sandy Krebs calls me, he says, "You want to write for me?" Right. And then his magazine goes out of business. And then Colin Bowman says for WCW, "You don't want to work on WCW magazine." So every time I try to get out of it, and then when that went belly up, Bill Apter called me, said, I got some openings at WOW magazine. You want to do some articles for WOW? And every time I tried to leave it, I couldn't. My phone would ring. I guess I had a good reputation. But at one point, I literally said, "No more wrestling."
Done.
I don't know why. I just said no more of it. You know what? It was the cosmic screwing I got leaving PWI. I never got over that because I had to leave, because they moved. In the pre-internet era, you had to be in the office to do the job. I had just bought property in New York. I could not literally leave. There's just no way. It would have been unseemly, and it was an uncertain future. And as it turned out, I think I made the right decision to stay behind because we all know what happened in the years since then. In any event, I just got, I wouldn't say angry. I just said, swallow hard, be mature, and just do something else. And I did. And I'd spent 17 years in an entertainment magazine more recently. What was that?
Hell to the yes, you did.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you had a hell of a post Pro Wrestling Illustrated life.
Oh, between the music
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a lot of other things. Yeah, it's been like I said, count my blessings in my old age. I have to. It's shoot. I've done like I say, I've done some stuff mere mortals don't get an opportunity to do. I was on stage with BB King 10 times,
Yeah.
who was one of the finest individuals who can ever imagine meeting and getting to know as a legitimate friend. I am so lucky. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I don't know what to say other than I feel lucky to have you as a friend too.
I just Bob, I can't express what your friendship has meant to me over the last couple of years. It's incredible.
Folks, Anthony Pires, listen to him, find him. There's nobody more engaging. You're going to miss out if you don't find him on social media. Do what he says. Thanks for being here again, man.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you.
Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. Well, let's put another one in the books. Anthony Pires. Nobody else like him. That conversation veered into new territory for the show, but you know what? It's because we love this stuff. This is our jam. Old school professional wrestling. We hope it's yours too. That's why you're here. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour with Joe Puccio. Thanks again to him for his contributions to the show. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. OutdatedWrestlingHour.buzzsprout.com is where you can find all of our shows, and you can find out all of our affiliates. Just check it out. Find us on WrestleCopia.com. Find me on Facebook. I'm the only Bob Smith singer with BB King. Find me on Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. Going to make a quick mosey out of here. I'm in the midst of recording 8 shows in 5 days. I'm ready to drop. But then again, I'm ready to drop, so I'm looking to have as much fun as I can while I got the time. This is Bob Smith. You remember me from PWI. We'll see you next week on the Outdated Wrestling Hour. And by all means, as Ringo Starr says, have some peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.